It's an immense, earth-shattering pain in my midsection and my head. I tried to move, but I can't. I tried to speak, but I can't do that either. It hurts too damn much, and my voice obeys me no more than my joints, muscles, or bones do. My mind's a mess, yet there's still movement. I can feel myself being lifted up and placed on something, a bed maybe. Oh no, a gurney. All right, one of the EMTs says, and several others roll me into the back of an ambulance and climb in behind me. But I'm already fading fast, feeling an inexplicable heat by the time those doors slam shut. One EMT, a blonde woman, looks at me with a furrowed brow just as I'm slipping away and says aloud, "Wait, I think I know what we're dealing with here." I turned around. There was a woman there, redhead, about my age, give or take, and she was alarmingly beautiful. How long she'd been staring at the exhibit alongside me, I had no idea. "I'm sorry," I said. "You know we're made of that stuff, right?" She nodded at the museum wall, which depicted in detail the births, life cycles, and deaths of stars. I pursed my lips. "We're made of stars, yep. Isn't it awesome?" She stepped up beside me and swept her arm across a diagram as she spoke. "I just watched a documentary about it last night. Stars are just fusion factories held together by their own gravity. They start off fusing hydrogen to helium, then keep going up, fusing heavier and heavier elements until they're working on the really heavy stuff. Then they exhaust their fuel, collapse under their own weight, and blow off their outer layers, showering the galaxies with all these random elements, some of which eventually create life, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm Robin, by the way." She extended her hand, and I shook it. "Hey, Ryan, nice to meet you." There was an awkward pause before I said, "All right, I've got one for you. If you replaced the sun with a black hole, what would happen?" "It depends on its mass." "Nope," I said. "The answer is, drum roll please, nothing. I mean, everything would get dark and cold, but we wouldn't fall out of orbit. Earth's path would stay exactly the same if the black hole had the same mass as the sun." "What? Yeah. You said it'd only be true if the black hole had the same mass as the sun, which it wouldn't, because the sun isn't massive enough to collapse into a black hole." "Oh, damn. Yep. Me 1, you 0. Sorry, pal." "All right," I said. "Here's the deal. Whoever gets the most points by closing time buys drinks." She smiled at that and punched me in the shoulder, just light enough not to sting. "All right, loser. Come on." The EMT said something. There's a flurry of activity around me, voices, blinding lights, and a cooling down of that monstrous heat. One of the paramedics looks over, then at another colleague, the blonde woman. He shakes his head slowly. "This one's gone, Rachel." But she keeps running tests, checking diagnostics, placing a soft hand on my arm in case I'm awake enough to feel the comfort. I am, barely. I'm fading fast and the heat's creeping back as I do. "Not yet, he's not," she says, pain in her voice she tries hard to hide. "I already lost one today. I'm not losing another." Robin said something and I laughed and agreed, and we rushed to the back of the line. "See? Told you you'd like the Ferris wheel. Can't believe you've never been on one before today." She shrugged. "Never thought there was much to it. I'm all about coasters, so I wasn't interested." "Well, they're not supposed to be extreme. Ferris wheels are for the parents waiting on their kids, sick people trying to settle their stomachs so they don't puke funnel cake all over the pavement, and adorable young couples, apparently." Just then, we were waved into the next seat. We sat down, and moments later, the great wheel groaned, protested, and finally started to turn. It dragged our cart around its underside, then lifted it up to the top, where we could see the whole city at twilight, the ships in the harbour bathed red by the setting sun, the clouds edged with just a hint of starlight. Robin snuggled up next to me, resting her head on my shoulder, and I put my arm around her waist. For a moment I could have sworn the empty seat in front of us moved on its own, and I furrowed my brow. But then Robin spoke. "Thank you for being here with me," she said. I didn't reply with words, just kissed her on the head and held her tight as the wheel began its descent. "On the 1800 block of Gardens Dale," one of the EMTs says. "Yeah! Another one out there." What a shitty night, huh? The conversation muffles again in short order, drifting in and out, but the jostling of the ambulance and the sound of the engine tell me we're still moving. The other paramedics keep running tests, checking my vitals, and as they work, I try to remember what happened. It hurts. Damn, does it hurt. almost as much as the rushing heat. My efforts cut short when the ambulance hits a bump and I nearly spill off the gurney. The great chill puts a steady hand on my chest. Hang in there, Brian. We're almost there. Robin pointed at the interstate ramp and I took the turn, putting St. Thomas Vineyard in the rear view. You still can't believe Mason got married? I said. He's only known that girl for what, a year? Less, Robin shrugged. They were in love. They hardly knew each other. They don't know if it's genuine lifelong love or just new relationship googly eyes that haven't worn off yet. I guarantee it. They'll be done within a year. Just watch. You don't know that, she said. There was a brief pause, then she added, We've been dating for 2 years, so how far off do you think we are? I shrugged. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. You haven't thought about it at all? I mean, of course I've thought about it. I just don't know if we're ready, you know? I looked over at her, but she just stared out at the rain, chin in her palm, so I kept going. Think about it like this. People prepare their whole lives for jobs, right? They start school as soon as they can talk, and they're not done till their 20s, all for a piece of paper that says, hey, hire my ass, I'm smart enough to work. But marriage? Nobody trains for that crap. People just hook up and say, hey, we're 25, you're cute, I'm cute, let's drop 15 grand on a giant ceremony, then live as glorified roommates for 5 years until we're both fat, hate each other, and get divorced because neither of us knew or cared how much work this thing takes. There was a longer pause before she said, with a seriousness I wasn't remotely prepared for, Is that where you think we're headed? Glorified roommates? Quickly I calculated a way out, but I miscalculated bad. No, not you, I said. Not us, I mean most people, you know. Most people just dive in and either get divorced or stick it out till someone gets heart disease. The divorce rate's over 50% now in the US, but the I don't love you anymore rate? Shit, that's probably close to 90 by the time everyone hits middle age. I just want to make sure you're the right person, you know? If there were ever words I wished I could take back, it was those 12. She said nothing, but I saw her reflection in the window. The little tear welling up in the corner said more than words ever could. Listen, that came out wrong. I just meant. Can you drop me off at my car, please? I thought you wanted to come over. I don't feel good. Please. We drove in silence for a while as the rain picked up, falling in sheets. After another 20 minutes, I turned onto my street and parked. She got out without so much as a glance, walked across the road to her car, and I ran after her. Robin, wait! I grabbed her lightly by the arm. It was slick with rainwater. Talk to me, please. What do you want? I blinked. I want you to talk to me. No, I mean with us. Where do you want this to go? Where do I want this to go? I want to be with you. Listen, I didn't mean to imply I don't want that. I just want us to be smart about it. You don't what? Maybe love isn't something you can calculate on a damn spreadsheet, Brian, she shouted over the storm's roar. Maybe it's just this thing you feel, you know? And maybe it doesn't make any damn logical sense. Maybe it's not supposed to. That's part of what makes it special. It's an adventure, a jump off a cliff with me type of thing. And yeah, sure, not everyone survives the fall, I guess. But if you find the right person, then a jump off a cliff with me type adventure? Come on, Robin. We're not writing a damn dating website profile here. This is real life. There are kids involved. Finances, house buying, mortgages, all that crap. Not every day's some cute little rom-com. This is hard, your life we're talking about. 2/3 even. Okay, all I meant was you have to be prepared for it. I thought we were prepared. What do you mean? She dug through her purse for a moment, then held up a ring, brilliant even in the rain. I felt my heart skip a full beat. Is that? It was my mom's, she said. She gave it to me before she died. She said, find your partner in crime, Robin. Find someone who'll sweep you off your feet and jump off a cliff with you. There was a pause before she added, at the time she said it, I thought I knew exactly who that person was. I tried for a moment, but I knew there wasn't a combination of words in the English language that could fix this. Goodbye, Brian. She kissed me on the cheek, brushed the back of her hand down it, then turned and got in her car. She drove off until I couldn't see her taillights through the pouring rain anymore. Voice, another EMT said, careful when you unload him. There were grunts of acknowledgement, then the back of the ambulance flew open, and the sound of the storm exploded inside. I felt the wind's bite and rain pelting my skin in sheets. Together they helped ease that oncoming heat I still couldn't place. Then I felt movement. The gurney dipped and hit the pavement, while the paramedics held me tight to it. There were shouts, lights, running feet, and then the hospital doors opened. I shouted at the man behind the counter. He looked at me with a furrowed brow. I shouted again over the rainfall hammering the glass. "Are you open?" He pointed at the sign saying the opposite and went back to reading, but I wasn't taking no for an answer. I dug out my wallet, pulled a 20 from the fold, and slapped it flat against the glass. Within seconds, the paper was soaked, but it got his attention. Seeing me there, he took pity and opened the door. "Make it quick, man." I know, I will. Thank you so much." I ran down the aisles and, true to my word, made it back to the counter in less than a minute. The man put down his book and processed the sale. "Date night," he said, bagging the card and flowers. I smiled a bit. "Something like that." Then I thanked him and ran back to my car. I got inside, took out the card and scribbled on its inner sleeve, "Jump off a cliff with me." Doctor, running alongside the cart, motioned to some nurses in the hall, and they ran to follow. He turned to the EMTs. "Is he stable?" "He's slipping." "All right, let's move fast." "Good. He mentioned something about being too hot earlier, but now his temperature's too low." Someone showed the doctor a chart. He read it as he ran, his face grim. "Shit. All right, let's move." I shouted at the car I was passing. "Just a little rain, damn it." But it wasn't, it was a torrent, sheets and kits of it. It had long since turned to dirt and mud, sweeping against my windshield like ocean surf. The road was slick with little rivers running past the pebbles. I was going way too fast for these conditions, but I didn't care. The doctor said, "I just want to get his fluids up." Rachel, the woman from the ambulance, ran up and discussed my condition in harsh whispers with the doctor as I faded. That damn heat flooded back, making it impossible to hear them, but their body language said enough. She hadn't given up hope. "Well, Bolin and Snake say they're against it entirely, so that doesn't bode well for fans, but look what happened with." I switched the radio off and gripped the wheel with both hands so hard my knuckles turned white. The car hit 70 miles per hour, 75, 79. The windshield wipers flew, but they weren't fast enough. I slammed my foot on the brakes as lights of activity loomed out of the rain from nowhere. The car jolted, shuddered, fought for traction. I heard the tires squeal and the metal grind in protest. "I don't care if he wants to protest," the doctor snapped back. "Tell him to wait in the damn lobby like everyone else." The nurse accepted the orders and headed back into the hallway. "I'm sorry, sir. You can't see him until..." "Until what? That's my son in there! That's my son!" Then there was a scuffle of feet and more shouts. A security guard dragged my father from the wing. Rachel paused as she heard the shouts, her eyes swelling with tears, but she looked at my face and seemed to realize something, though she didn't say what. The shouts continued but grew faint, and so did I. The heat came rushing in as I faded. "That's my son! That's my boy! Let me see my boy! Stop! Please, stop!" The police officer had both hands up as my car barreled toward him. "Stop! Stop!" Finally, there was a jolt and shudder as the tires gained control at last. The car slammed to a halt. Both the officer and I sighed in relief. He approached my window and tapped the glass with his knuckle. I lowered it. "I'm sorry, sir," I shouted over the rain. "Roads are crazy out here." "You okay?" He ignored my question. "I'm going to need you to sit here for a bit, okay? Just until the accident's cleared up." "Accident? It's bad." He nodded toward the wreckage. "Just sit tight. We'll wave you over when there's an open lane." Then he ran off into the storm. I scanned the scene. There was a man on the side of the road, sitting on the pavement with a poncho against the rain, head in his hands. His SUV was totaled. The front end bent, twisted, and mangled beyond recognition. But the other car was in far worse shape. I squinted hard and could only make out panels of white and charred chunks of metal through the downpour, but it was enough. It was a Civic. Oh God, no, 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 no. I got out of the car, left the door hanging open in the rain, and ran forward, until the officer caught sight of me, ran back and grabbed me by the shoulders. "Hey," he said, "I told you to wait in the car. What are you?" "Robin." I shouted over him. "Robin!" Then I saw it. A fleeting glimpse of movement. A white sheet flipped on a gurney, strands of red hair falling from the right side, hanging bare as the EMTs carted the body away. "Robin, that's my girl! That's my girl!" The officer, confused and stunned, did the only thing he could, dragged me back to my car. "No, stop!" I was inconsolable, but in no shape to resist. "Stop, please! That's my girl! Let me see my girl! Please stop!" One of the EMTs, covered in blood from the waist up, turned to look at the spectacle. "Rachel," the doctor shouted, "you with us or what? Let's go." She blinked as she stared at me, then said, "Aren't you sorry? I just realized this guy was—" "Get the charcoal, please. We don't have time." She ran off to fetch it. Then I felt a hideously invasive sensation, a tube shoved up my nose, sliding down into my throat. I was too weak to gag, but I somehow clenched my fists enough to seize up. "Move him! Hold him down to steady him!" "Whoa, whoa, 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 you okay, man?" My roommate stumbled back as I threw open the door. I charged past him. "You're coming in hot," he said again. "You good, bro?" I ignored him, went to the bathroom, and leaned against the sink for a long moment. I grabbed my temples and sobbed. Silent, aching, racking sobs. There was a knock. "Hey man," he said. "You good, dude? Anything I can, get for you, or—" "I'm fine," I managed. It wasn't convincing in the slightest, but I didn't care. I opened my phone. There was a text from Robin from this morning. "I love you." They were, all at once, the most beautiful and the most painful words I'd ever read. "I love you. I love you too. I'm coming. Hang on, baby, I'm coming." Then I backed out, found my dad in the contacts and typed, "I love you, Dad." Moments later, I got a response. "I love you too, son. You okay?" But I ignored it, threw open the cupboard and grabbed an old bottle of pills. A nurse said I swallowed the whole damn thing. Lucky my roommate called when he did, but the doctor was incredulous. "Well, that remains to be seen now, doesn't it?" Then he turned to the door. "Rachel! I got it, I'm here! All right, fingers crossed, people. Let's see if we can't save a psycho." There were isolated chuckles. Rachel, though, almost snapped at her superior for the jab. But then someone said, "Here we go," and thick, wretched black stuff funneled down that tube into my throat. I was almost desperate enough, but not quite strong enough to resist. I could feel it sliding, hitting bottom, pumping, pulsing. My heart rate was erratic. My breathing was erratic. My ability to comprehend was every bit as erratic. I struggled against the restraints as much as I could, but all my effort and strength amounted to little more than a faint whimper. Rachel moved to my side, held my hand, and said in a whisper soft enough that only I could hear, "Don't follow her, Brian. Don't follow her, please. Jesus, I need him here. I need this win." But I began to fade all the same. One by one, as the spikes on the EKG slowed to sporadic pulses, I saw the nurses turn to each other and shake their heads. One by one they left, until there was only a trembling Rachel there, holding on for me. 24 hours, the doctor said, just as the darkness swelled in and I felt myself falling away. The conversation carried on as I passed at 2:32 a.m. on that Saturday. Clouds of dirt trailed behind the 2001 Toyota Tacoma. Anxious, excited air filled the cab of the beat-up truck. After the year my wife and I had, we'd been itching for a fresh start. Like a game of Tetris, I'd managed to pack all our belongings into the bed of the truck. Of course, we were pretty short on furniture, having lived in a cramped Chicago apartment before this. I'd majored in creative writing at DePaul University and was desperate to get out of the city, to live in a rural town like the one I'd grown up in. I hoped the change of scenery would spark inspiration, as it does for most writers. My wife, Hannah, works as a customer service rep, handling her job over the phone and online. We both wanted a slower pace, and we figured moving would be a fun idea. It took months of searching, but we'd finally found the perfect place. Hannah and I loaded up the truck and hopped onto Lake Street, heading west early enough to dodge the morning traffic. Most folks who don't live in Chicago or even Illinois don't realize we've got vast farmlands and wildlife just miles from the city's hustle and bustle. Our new home was a one-story ranch near the Edwards River in Mercer County, Illinois. Main roads could only take us so far. Soon we were on unpaved, rough dirt paths. Trees and wildlife dotted the route as we trekked toward our new place. Hannah was napping in the passenger seat when the blunt end of the paved road jolted her awake. She looked confused, clearly unfamiliar with her surroundings, but then sank back into her seat with a smile creeping across her face. "Wow, what a pretty path," she almost whispered, her voice nearly drowned out by the radio's low hum. "It's a good thing. I mean, we won't have to worry about neighbors throwing parties and keeping us up all night," I replied. She giggled and took my hand, then turned back to gaze out the window. The path soon curved around a small pond, and we found ourselves in the middle of a glade. The clearing was ringed by woods, with the house smack in the center. The dense forest made the house look tiny by comparison. The dirt path we'd been driving on led to the side of the house and around back. Instead of following it to the end, I parked about 20 feet from the front door. The house looked like an extension of my truck, run down but functional. The front door sat dead center, flanked by evenly spaced windows on both sides. Old brown siding topped with a weathered black shingle roof gave it a slightly ominous vibe. I unlocked the doors as we let go of each other's hands and stepped out. I walked around to Hannah's side and we both stood there in silence, taking it in. This was where we'd spend the rest of our days. Well, it's not the prettiest thing I've ever seen, but it's got character, you know? We could always head into town, grab some paint, and spruce up the outside. And once we save up enough, we could get someone to re-shingle the roof. I, for one, can't wait to start planning my garden, she added, breaking the thick quiet. I soaked it all in for another moment, picturing what she'd said, the garden out back, maybe kids running around the yard, tossing a ball with our future family dog. A proud smile spread across my face. "It's perfect," I finally said. Hannah turned to me, mirroring my glee. We unpacked and hauled our stuff inside. The house was small, 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, all lined up along the back wall. Through the front door was a giant open room that served as the kitchen, living room and dining area all in one. We turned the extra bedrooms into offices, one for me, one for Hannah, though we wouldn't be able to use them until the following Wednesday when the Comcast folks were due to come set up the internet and landline. That meant Hannah and I were taking a much-needed break from work. We decided to take a trip into town to get a feel for our new surroundings. So we headed back down the dirt path and deserted road, landing in a small town with a main street lined with little shops. We drove along it for a while, scoping out restaurants we might try. Dell's Diner was one of the first spots we spotted. After not eating the whole drive, Hannah and I were starving. We walked into the cozy little diner and were greeted by a middle-aged woman. Wrinkles framed her dark, tired eyes, and she wore a red polo, khakis, and a pink and red striped apron. A name tag pinned to her chest read, "Bianca." "Just 2? "Yes, ma'am," I replied. "Follow me," she said flatly. Bianca grabbed 2 menus and shuffled down the aisle, past booths and tables lining the edges. She stopped abruptly, turned, and pointed to a booth on her right, setting the menus down. Hannah slid into the far side and I took the seat next to her. We settled in and turned our attention back to Bianca. She pulled a notepad and pen from her apron pocket. "You two just passing through?" "No, we're actually moving in. We bought the house on the outskirts of town, near Edwards River," Hannah answered. Bianca shifted her focus to my wife, surprise flashing across her face. She looked puzzled, like she was debating whether to say something. Hannah and I exchanged questioning glances. The diner fell into an awkward silence that felt like it dragged on forever, though it was probably just 30 seconds. "So, you're the folks who bought Georges Peterson's house," she said, her voice heavy with emotion, almost pitying. Hannah and I picked up on it instantly, and a knot started forming in my stomach. "Is that not a good thing?" I challenged. "Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. You two aren't from around here," the waitress said, placing the notepad and pen on the table. "Mr. Peterson was a real nice guy. He'd come to this diner after his hunting trips, always ordering the same old thing," she said, almost lost in memory, like she could still see him. "Well, one day his brother decided to surprise him and his sister-in-law, but when he got to the house, it was empty. He called the cops after finding blood inside. He started searching and ended up in another glade, this one covered in blood. The townsfolk tried to organize a search party, but it never amounted to much. The sheriffs investigated for a while. They tested the blood. It was Mrs. Peterson's and their 10-year-old daughter's. A lot of blood. Too much blood. She stared at the table, pausing, haunted by the image. Hannah and I were hooked on this chilling tale. None of this had come up when I was buying the house, though it did explain why it was dirt cheap. The Peterson girls were never found, and the police are still hunting for Jorge. It's just crazy to think that in this small town, where I've lived my whole life, something so terrifying could happen. It messed me up for a while. Our daughters used to play together. Explaining it to my girl was one of the hardest things I've ever done. She trailed off, staring blankly into the distance. She let out a loud sigh and shook her head, as if trying to erase the picture in her mind. Snapping back to her job, she said, "So, what can I get for you two today?" We ordered a pretty average meal, and the whole diner stayed cloaked in uneasy silence, punctuated by long, pitying looks from the waitress. The 20-minute drive home was plagued with the same uncomfortable quiet. Back at the house, what had once been a thoughtless glance now felt like something out of a horror flick. The surrounding woods were swallowed by darkness, the glade lit only by dull moonlight. The air outside was still, not a creature stirred, just the faint rustle of leaves around us. We headed into the ranch and found our half-set-up bedroom. I changed into pajamas while Hannah showered. I heard the rusty shower handle squeak, followed by the soft roar of water hitting the tub. I flopped onto the bed and felt myself slipping into a deep sleep when a twig snapped outside. My eyes shot open and darted to the window. The scene was painted in dim, harsh colors, but I couldn't pinpoint the sound. I climbed out of bed and tiptoed to the window. Nothing. Not a single thing that could have made that noise. My chest tightened and sweat beaded on my neck and forehead. "That damn waitress got to me," I chuckled under my breath. I crawled back into bed and called it a night. In the morning, we kept working to make the house feel lived in. Trips back and forth to town for furniture and groceries became routine. But something about Bianca's eerie story stuck with me, churning in my mind. I craved more details about the horrors tied to my property. On a quiet Wednesday morning, I took the truck back into town, hunting for answers. I ended up at the library, sitting at the public computers in the back. At first, I found next to nothing, until I stumbled across an article. It had what I was looking for. Jorge Peterson and his wife, Deborah, had lived in that ranch with their daughter, Noelle. The place had been in the family long before Jorge was born, handed down to him after his grandmother passed. They'd been there just 5 years before the incident that sparked my search. According to the article, not only were they missing, but they'd been gone for a while. The blood stains suggested the two girls might have been dead for up to a month, based on how old they were. A cold chill ran through me when I read the next part. Forensic evidence showed the stains varied in consistency and volume, hinting they might not have been killed at once. Maybe there'd been multiple attempts, or worse, torture. Thoughts of this guy coming back to my house made me stand up and shove my chair back into the desk, sending it crashing to the floor in a loud heap. I glanced around the tiny library. Luckily, I was the only one nearby. I got a grip on my panic, bolted out of the building, and sped home. I'd left Hannah alone. Who knew what could be out there? Or worse, who? The truck groaned as I pushed it too fast down the dirt road, rocks pinging off the rusty underbelly. When the house came into view, I saw the front door wide open. My stomach knotted. I flung the truck door open and jogged lightly to the doorway, staying out of sight from anyone inside. I shuffled quietly to the door and peeked into the dim house. Thoughts of that twig snapping flashed through my head, making me regret brushing it off. I saw nothing. Panic rose like a lump in my throat and my eyes started to tear up. I blurted out Hannah's name by accident, then kept shouting it. I stood still, straining for any sign of her or anything that could lead me to her. I started walking around the house, and as I rounded the corner, there was a loud scream. Hannah ran into my arms from about 7 feet away. My legs buckled and I hit the ground. My stomach dropped, tears welled up, and she started laughing hysterically, oblivious to how bad she'd scared me. Normally I wouldn't flinch at her attempts to spook me, but this time she'd really gotten me. What she didn't know was how real the danger could have been. 3 days passed without a hitch. We'd arrived in the rural area on a Tuesday, and now it was Sunday night, our couple's date night. Hannah and I made a trip into town for dinner, just to enjoy each other's company. I had a couple of drinks, and by the time we were done, I drove us home. We got back around 1 a.m. Hannah collapsed into bed and was out cold, still in her heels. Being the good husband I am, I took her shoes off and threw a blanket over her. Feeling accomplished, I headed for a shower, but something felt off the moment I walked through the front door. The air felt heavy, like that uneasy vibe that makes you run up the stairs when you're home alone, like something's chasing you. I ditched the shower idea, stripped down to my boxers, and climbed into bed. As I drifted off next to my drunk wife, I could hear noises around the ranch. I brushed them off, trying to pin a name to each sound. After nearly a week here, there hadn't been much activity at night beyond a twig or two snapping. Then I heard it, a low screech like a fork dragging across a plate. I shot out of bed, grabbed the baseball bat I kept in the room, and sprinted to the front area. I tried to stay quiet, listening hard to zero in on where the deranged noise was coming from. I crept stealthily toward the side of the house it seemed to be coming from, navigating the pitch-black space as best I could. Outside, the nearly full moon lit things up a bit better. I inched toward the window where the sound was loudest and positioned myself to the side. I peered out, nothing at first, until my eyes adjusted. From the house to the woods, not a living thing stirred. But as my vision sharpened, I caught shades at the edge of the clearing. I made out 5 human figures, no, 7. They looked like they were in robes, standing still, spaced about 20 feet apart. I froze, unsure how to handle it. Then I heard movement outside the window I was at. A figure dashed off to join the rest. I stood there, distracted, trying to see what they were up to when I heard rattling, the doorknob. Someone was trying to turn it as quietly as possible, but I'm from the city. I'd locked it. After their failed attempt, one of my worst fears hit me. Someone was out there in the woods, and they were after us. I briefly thought about the money I'd sunk into this place, the equity we'd lose if we had to leave, and the hassle of moving in with our parents until we found somewhere new. I snapped back to reality when I pictured Hannah, passed out in bed, defenseless. I rushed back to our bedroom and found her sleeping peacefully. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Every rustle of wind had me jumping out of bed, bat in hand. Once I heard that screeching again, I didn't leave her side. Then there was more movement. I turned to the window and my heart leapt. A man stared back at me. He looked about 40, with faint wrinkles around his mouth and deep bags under his eyes. His hood shadowed his gaze, but I could feel his hate boring into me. I sat there, frozen, as he turned and sauntered back into the forest. The overwhelming dread paralyzed me. I couldn't move even if I'd tried. The figures were still out there, and now I was truly terrified. They knew which room we slept in. There was no one to call. No internet, no landline until Comcast came Wednesday. Relief washed over me as the wood's darkness faded into daylight. The once beautiful sky, with its elaborate colors, felt peaceful, but now it just reminded me we were on our own. Even with daylight, I stayed rooted to the bed, hand clutching the bat, eyes fixed on the ceiling. What have I done? I thought. Instead of staying in the city with our friends, I thought moving somewhere kid-friendly was a great idea. Look where we were now. Self-loathing and anger flooded me, only interrupted by Hannah stirring. She looked so peaceful, oblivious to the night's horrors. She rolled onto her side, facing me. My eyes landed on her pretty face, blonde hair wild on the pillow, blanket up to her waist, still in last night's dress. I debated not telling her, but she needed to know. I don't know how long I stared at her soft face. Her eyes twitched, then fluttered open. Her big brown eyes met mine, and she gave me a slight smile. "Good morning," she cooed. My face stayed cold, unmoving. She read my expression. "What's wrong?" Her eyes shifted to the bat in my hands, confusion spreading across her face. "We have a lot to talk about," I said, pausing. "Get dressed. I'll meet you in the kitchen." I got up and headed out, closing the bedroom door behind me. I walked to the front door, disengaged the lock and swung it open. The wildlife seemed unfazed, as if it had no memory of last night's terror. Birds and insects chirped away. I scanned the trees, then spotted my truck. The tires were slashed. Dread hit me hard, my mouth going dry as terror surged through me. I stepped back inside and turned to see Hannah standing in the bedroom doorway. I motioned her to the dining room table, and she sat. I recounted last night's events, including the tires. The weight of it sank in, and we started to cry. Not just from fear, but for the kids we might never have, the family we might never see again. Despair filled the air as our sobs turned to whimpers. Hannah's puffy red eyes stayed glued to the table. I watched her sniffle and wipe her tear-streaked cheeks. "So, what are we going to do?" she pleaded. "I don't know. Maybe we could take the truck to town, or at least see how far we can get. We'd be lucky to make 2 miles, but I doubt it'd even go that far. I could try putting the spare tire on one of the front wheels, but that's a last resort." As the words left my mouth, I realized how screwed we were. We had no clue who these strangers were or what they wanted. We were at their mercy. We spent the day prepping for our unwanted nighttime guests. I put the spare tire on a front wheel and parked the truck a few feet from the door. The little furniture we had, we pushed against the windows and doors to the offices and bedroom. We left the front door unbarricaded, our only quick escape. We sat in our bedroom with the biggest piece of furniture, a wardrobe from Hannah's grandmother blocking the window. With every hour of daylight, my eyes grew heavier. Sleep chased me, but I fought it with everything I had. I wasn't strong enough. I woke to Hannah shaking me, her big brown eyes wide with fear. The cool darkness of evening blanketed the ranch. It was night. Panic leapt into my throat. I cursed myself for dozing off. Then I heard that familiar scratching, the strangers running what sounded like knives along the windows. It was a noise that made your hair stand on end. My wife and I sank to the floor, clinging to each other. The awful scratching dragged on for what felt like hours until it stopped. Hannah shot me a worried glance. "What do you think they're going to do?" she asked, almost to herself. I stayed quiet, listening hard to our uninvited guests. Just as suddenly as the scratching ceased, chanting took its place, low and rhythmic at first, then building into a horrifying screech. The satanic shrieks grew louder, intensifying with every heartbeat. The gibberish they'd been chanting turned to guttural screams. The howls seemed to come from every direction. Every window in the house started getting pounded on. A metallic, warm taste filled my mouth. I'd bitten my lip so hard it bled. The pounding turned to punches, but the windows held. The chaos morphed back into rhythmic chanting, the volume fading to a loud roar. The assault on the ranch eased, and the once turbulent air grew peaceful again. Hannah sobbed softly into my arms. Just when I let myself think it might be over, 2 heavy knocks rang off the hard oak door. Hannah flinched and kept crying into my soaked shirt. We stayed huddled on the floor, waiting to see what these sadistic bastards wanted. 2 more heavy knocks echoed, followed by a dreadful silence. "Come out now, and we don't have to come back tomorrow," a rough, raspy voice called from the other side. Petrified, I couldn't respond. Hannah buried her face deeper into me. "Fine, have it your way," the voice concluded. Deafening crashes tore through the empty house, all the windows shattered at once. I let go of Hannah and gripped the bat tight in my palms. So this is it, I thought. No one would ever know what happened to us. We'd end up like the Petersons, but then, nothing. Not a sound from outside. It was like the darkness had evaporated with the rising sun, leaving no trace of life. I was wiped out, physically and mentally. I fell into a deep sleep the moment sunlight hit the sky. I woke with Hannah shaking me again, this time in daylight. "What time is it?" I asked. 4 p.m. I rubbed my eyes and sat up, cracking my back. Dark bags hung under Hannah's eyes. "Did you sleep?" "No, we can't both sleep at the same time." "Well, we'll have to take turns." That was a sentence I never thought I'd hear in my lifetime. I grew up in a small town in Idaho. My family grew potatoes for a living, never much to worry about. I was the odd one who moved to the big city. I'd never have believed something like this could happen to me. The idea of someone breaking in and doing who knows what while we slept was a very real, very scary possibility now. "All right, you get some sleep then. I'll check if we've got any supplies we can use tonight." She put her head down instantly, her chest rising and falling steadily. She was out. I got to my feet and blood rushed to my head, making me dizzy. Colors faded to black and white as my vision swirled. I stood there waiting for it to pass until the colours crept back and I didn't feel lightheaded anymore. I staggered to the oak door and undid the lock. A lump formed in my throat as heat spread across my face. I pulled the door open. It whined and creaked the whole way. A bright flash from the centre caught my eye. One of our visitors had stabbed a hunting knife into the middle of the door. I yanked it out and tossed it inside. I stepped out cautiously, shutting the door behind me. The grass around the ranch was trampled, like a herd of cattle had grazed through. Deep scratches scarred the siding. Anxiety gripped me, and I darted back inside. I triple-checked the lock and felt pure dread as I pictured the night ahead. I was grateful for the knife they'd left, but terrified of what it meant. Did they want us to defend ourselves, or was it just a message? A hopeful thought hit me. We just had to make it until the Comcast folks showed up tomorrow with the internet and landline. We only had to survive the night. I sat next to my wife on the floor, lost in thought, wishing the sun wouldn't set. But I could see the pink and orange light filling the sky. I woke Hannah, and we moved to the open area, sitting dead center. I unscrewed the doorknob, flipped it so the lock faced us, and locked it once I was done. We huddled there, facing the front door. We just need to make it through the night. Then, in the morning, the Comcast people should be here, and we can leave with them, I said, trying to reassure myself. That's when faint chanting started. Dread surged deep inside me, my blood pumping anxiously. The chanting grew louder and closer with every second. Moaning and shouting broke the rhythm as it turned into chaotic screaming. The obnoxious shrieks stopped as they reached the house's edge. An eerie stillness settled in, broken only by 2 heavy knocks. What do you want? My voice cracked as I yelled at them. Hannah clutched my waist, her head buried in my shoulder. No response, just silence. You, the raspy voice said. Hannah hyperventilated as my eyes flooded and my mouth went dry. The doorknob rattled as someone tried to get in again. Bangs and crashes echoed through the house. The vibrations hit us where we sat. No doubt they'd gotten past one of our barricaded windows. Hannah's wide eyes locked on the bedroom door. It shook as someone tried to tear it off its hinges. I handed her the hunting knife. She gripped it like her life depended on it, and it might. I raised my bat, ready to swing, but then the door stopped moving. A metallic clank sounded behind us. I spun around. The lock disengaged. They'd distracted us. I rushed to the front door, but it was too late. It flew open, and 2 men in dark red robes stormed in. I didn't think. I swung the bat with everything I had. It cracked against the first guy's head with an awful snap. Blood sprayed across my clothes and face as he dropped like a sack of bricks, a dark puddle forming around him. Adrenaline surged through my icy veins. I swung at the second guy as he charged me. Another hit landed. More gore splattered my face and clothes before he hit the ground. I grabbed Hannah's hand tight, and we scrambled to the Tacoma. I threw open the driver's door, shoved her in, and heard footsteps closing in as I got inside. I jammed the key in the ignition, and to my shock, the truck sputtered to life. I slammed my foot down and it jerked forward, picking up speed. Against my earlier guess, the flat tires held up better than I'd hoped. I floored it toward town. As we neared the wood's edge, 3 men in crimson robes leapt from a bush. I swerved to avoid them, veering off the main path onto a neglected trail. The flat tires struggled with the rough terrain. We drove nearly half a mile to a fork in the road when more robed figures stepped out, side by side on one path. One aimed what looked like a gun at us. I slumped in my seat, bracing for bullets to rip through the windshield. I veered the other way, speeding past, kicking up rocks. We dodged trees narrowly, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Pure, unadulterated thrill, like the first time on a roller coaster. I used to love that feeling, but dread still clawed at me. We followed the overgrown path until it vanished. My headlights barely cut through the dark, and suddenly we weren't in the woods anymore. We were in a clearing, identical to the one our house sat in. I slammed the brakes and the truck screeched to a halt. Thunderous chanting erupted outside. Men in dark red robes emerged from the tree line, 20 of them, closing in. The ones on the road led us here, I thought. This is where they found the Peterson women, I said aloud. Hannah shook and sobbed uncontrollably. I stiffened, unlocked my door and pushed it open. Hannah screamed hysterically, begging me to stay, but I slid out and stepped onto the ground. I walked to meet the man sauntering toward us. The others stopped, but he kept coming, tall, stern, with a wrinkled mouth and dark skin. I knew without a doubt this was the hooded guy from my window. A smirk crept across his face as he glared at me. "How are you enjoying the new home?" he asked in that raspy voice from outside our door. "Well, it was fine until you bastards showed up," I shot back with a quick, forced laugh. His smile faded. "Whether you allow us or not, we're going to sacrifice your wife. She's needed," he said, the last part booming with conviction, like it sway me. That thrill stirred in my gut again. Before I could answer, robed men rushed the truck and dragged Hannah out, kicking and screaming. While I was distracted, others grabbed me, forcing me to my knees. They held my arms tight. I couldn't break free. They hauled her to the leader and dropped her to the ground, beating her until she had no fight left. I squirmed, but it was useless. The leader pulled a knife from his robes. "Wait!" I yelled. He turned back to me, that hard, emotionless face staring. The thrill built again. Violence was its trigger. Weighing the consequences, I spoke, chasing that overpowering rush. "Let me do it," I said. Warmth surged through me as the excitement took hold. The leader's face broke into a genuine smile, like a parent whose kid had come home. He nodded slowly, carefully, keeping his identity shadowed. The men holding me let go. I pulled myself up, tears streaming down my cheeks as I braced for what came next. I lifted the knife into the air and plunged it deep into Hannah's chest. She screamed and howled as dark crimson blood oozed from the wound. All sadness and despair drained from me as thrill took over. I looked to the leader. He raised his hands to his hood and pushed it back, revealing his face. "Welcome to the Brotherhood," George Peterson said with a smug grin on his wrinkled face. A man to my left handed me robes, and a frenzied passion gripped me. The acceptance I'd always craved was mine now. More tears leaked from my eyes, tears of joy. All I could say to my new family was, "When do we start?" I was 16 when I first saw the crack, a jagged line about 4 feet long, but less than an inch wide. I found it hovering in the air behind my house, not on the sidewalk, but just off to the side. It was visible from every angle as I circled around it, suspended harmlessly with nothing else to it. I couldn't touch it. My hands passed right through as if it wasn't there, though by the time they came out the other side, they were pale, numb, and tingling with cold. I wouldn't even walk near it. Something about that emptiness just felt wrong. I'd explored caves, peered into deep holes, even gazed through a telescope at the vast space between the stars. But this was different. It wasn't like something was missing. It felt more like something extra, something that shouldn't be there at all. My family moved not long after, and I suppose I forgot about it for a while. Time marched steadily forward, except maybe for a few months after college when it paused just long enough for me to fall in love with my future wife. She had the kind of smile that hinted at a secret, and if I had to guess, I'd say it was the secret to happiness. I would have given anything to explore every hidden corner of her mind, to know her as deeply as she knew herself, until one day we could start crafting new secrets together. It was about a week after we met at work. We'd both stayed late to clean up after an office party, when I asked her to come sit with me on the roof and look at the sky. There we were, side by side, the space between our hands burning like a flame. Her lips glowed against the backdrop of endless stars, twinkling like millions of jealous eyes, wishing they could trade places with me. I'd never felt so weak. My legs trembled, and I kept shifting positions so she wouldn't notice. I didn't trust the words in my mouth, the thoughts in my head, or any part of me that blurred into nothingness just to make room for my awe of her, everything she was. That's when I saw the crack again, and it reminded me how powerful weakness could be. It was bigger now, running along the side of an external AC unit, not quite flush against it. If I looked closely, I could see the empty air between the metal box and the crack itself. Little streaks of light bled in from the surrounding stars, vanishing forever into that void, a cookie-cutter gap in reality the world had forgotten to fill. "You can leave whenever you want," she said. I guess she'd noticed I was distracted. I shook my head and her fingers traced their way up my hand. I turned to her, her breath warm against my lips, and suddenly, That was the only thing in the world. 6 months later, we were engaged. Another year and we were married. Neither of us stayed at that office long, and I never went back to that roof. The crack didn't matter anymore. Bad dreams can't hurt you once you're awake, and beside her grace, I was truly awake for the first time. Things went well for us, but we were so in love that I don't think we'd have noticed if they hadn't. I landed a job in investment banking and climbed the corporate ladder. I started seeing more cracks, but no one else seemed to notice, so I kept quiet about them. Sometimes they lined up perfectly with an object, but I could feel their emptiness tugging at me, and I knew what they were. There was a big one above the conference room table at work, but I had a future here and wasn't about to let something like that derail my success. My diligence paid off when my boss finally told me he was getting older and wanted me as a partner in the firm. He was standing right on the other side of the crack when he said it, so keeping eye contact was tricky. "Unless that's not something you want," he added, misreading my silence. "Of course, you can leave whenever you want." The same words, but I didn't yet grasp their weight. I just smiled and shook his hand, reaching carefully beneath the crack hanging between us. It was another dream come true, and I felt like the king of the world. My wife and I moved into a big house, and we had a baby girl together. I watched her grow, and I watched the cracks grow with her. Hairline fractures splintered across the sky, weaving a web through the air. I had to watch my step. There'd be a dozen of them in my path on any given day. I passed through a big one once in my car while changing lanes. I didn't notice it at first. The crack sliced straight through my windshield without disturbing the glass, cutting through my chest and out the other side. Cold doesn't even begin to describe it. That line erased my body as it passed through, displacing skin and organs, leaving a sucking, hollow void for the briefest moment before it was gone. I jerked the wheel and spun off the road into the guardrail. My hands raced over my chest, fists pounding against solid skin to reassure myself I was still whole. I started working from home after that. There's a bathroom without any cracks, and I spend most of my time there. I've seen my wife and daughter walk right through them without a flicker of awareness. I can't explain what I see or feel. I know they'd think I'm crazy, and maybe I am, but that doesn't change a damn thing. I'll sit in there for hours, working on my laptop or reading a book, dreading the thought of stepping out where I might stumble through what isn't there. My wife begged me to leave the bathroom sometimes, and I'd open the door just to wander the house or sit with her in the living room, but I couldn't go outside anymore. There were too many of them, more every day, it seemed. The world around me had shattered, and I was the only one who noticed. I know it hurt her, but in time, my wife accepted this was how life would be. She made the best of it, inviting friends and family over, making excuses when I was expected somewhere. She took cooking classes, learned to make all my favorite meals, even had a small table and TV installed in the bathroom I'd confined myself to. My daughter was a different story, 8 years old now, and no amount of explaining could make her understand how much I loved her, even if I wasn't always there. I didn't realize how ashamed she was of me until a teacher called to say she'd been telling her friends I was dead. I made an effort to sit with her in the kitchen, to ask why she'd said that, but all she replied was, "You might as well be." And she was right. I wasn't taking care of my family anymore. They had enough money saved that they didn't need me to work. I was just a burden, growing bigger every day, just like the cracks. Some nights, I wouldn't leave the bathroom to go to bed, and I could hear my wife crying through the wall. I tried pushing myself harder, forcing myself through the emptiness, but it was no use. They cut through me like a blade, froze me to the core, shredding bone and sinew and stitching me back together so seamlessly that only the memory of the pain remained. I was ready for it to be over. I just didn't know it until I heard the words from my daughter's mouth as she pressed against the other side of the bathroom door. "You can leave whenever you want." "Yes," I told her, "I'm ready." "All you've got to do is throw yourself into a big one," she said. "You'll be out." She knew about them? I leapt up and flung the door open, but she wasn't there. I raced down the hall, shouting her name, forcing myself through each searing void that tore my mind and body, heart and soul apart. There she was, standing outside next to the biggest abyss I'd ever seen. A wall of darkness 10 feet wide, stretching into the sky like a skyscraper. I could feel the pull of that emptiness whispering to me, beckoning me with a promise of freedom and release that a lifetime of memories couldn't drown out. Just do it already. You've been here long enough, she said. But I was afraid. Even from this distance, I could remember how those dark tendrils felt as they ran through me. Would there be anything left of me on the other side? It was big enough that I might not come out at all. I could step in and be gone. It's what my daughter wanted, and maybe my wife too, if she had the guts to admit it. Maybe it's what I wanted. But on my knees before all of creation and its opposite, I was terrified. It's easy, just follow me. I tried to stop her, air clawing through my lungs, feet stumbling beneath me, lunging in a desperate grab, but she stepped into that blackness and was gone. There was no choice but to follow. Into the looming void I plunged, screaming without sound, bleeding without wounds, disintegrating into nothing. Then I opened my eyes. I was reclining in a padded chair like the kind you'd find at a dentist's office. 3 men stood over me, surrounded by a mess of beeping machines, IV lines, and heart rate monitors cluttering the room. "Well?" one of them asked. "How was it? You were out for almost an hour." I couldn't answer. There was nothing left of me to answer with. "We kept sending signals telling you it was okay to leave," another said. "Didn't you get them?" I closed my eyes and took a long breath. Life 2.0 still had some bugs, but they told me they'd figure out how to fix most of the cracks if I wanted to go again. "It's going to be ready for the market soon," they said. "People are going to love it," they said. "Did you notice anything else that needs fixing?" they asked. "Just in this world," I replied. "The red lights are only making the pain worse."